Good morning. Good morning, Prof.
After a while.
Good to have you around.
Good morning, Akinsanya Femi.
Good morning. Good morning. Long time. Good to see you. Well, before we came to you there, Steve and I were talking about the fact that apathy had once again dominated these elections, which on the one hand can be quite shocking, but perhaps not many people are surprised to hear that. We were also discussing the fact that there are many different reasons for voter apathy. It could be a lack of awareness. There could also be some disillusionment where people might not feel as though the politics offered to them represents what they want. They may also feel as though these elections are already decided before they even reach the ballot. So then again, they don't feel as though their vote holds any type of weight. There's also perhaps also talking about a lack of knowledge, the fact that people may not be aware about the different systems of government and governance and how it applies to them. When you look at Lagos State, for example, I know it was both Lagos and Ogun that both went to the polls yesterday, but if we first focus on Lagos State, what do you think the reason, the biggest reason for voter apathy is out of all of those?
Well, it's really interesting because we're just witnessing the repeat of some of the many problems we've always identified with our electioneering process, and the election in Lagos yesterday has just come again to exemplify it. Voter apathy, like you mentioned, maybe the absence of sensitization, and maybe a kind of disillusionment on the part of the electorate. So all these reasons are still conflicting, and of course, it has hallmarked the elections in the past, I just thought that there are also reasons why we should be much more careful, much more prepared ahead of any election, particularly the general elections coming up in 2023 and in the immediate circumstances, the Anambra elections. And our preparation should go beyond, yes, it's okay to be mindful of transparency and accountability by ensuring that the election, proper. It's the mechanism for election can be done by INEC or the umpire that it is proper. But beyond that, activities, preparatory activities in advance of the election should also be salutary. And what are these activities? Proper creation of awareness, proper sensitization, and maybe a reminder again of the values of our elections. Because from what we saw yesterday, nothing has changed. There's no creativity even in the area of the downsides of the election. Regarding inducement, regarding multiple voting, regarding delayed arrival of officials. And all these are things that we've been seeing, these are things we've been talking about, and it's slightly shameful that they are recurring. They are recurring again. So I think it's a wake-up call. It's more reasons why we should have to look away from the election proper, the mechanism for the election, the instrument of the election, and expand our scope of preparation, into how well we're able to create awareness, how well we're able to tell the electorate the importance of the election. Beyond the fact that it's just a festival of democracy, it's also a reason. There's also the need for the electorates to be told the importance of the election. Yes, we complain about leaders. We complain about those who are supposed to bring about growth and development through good governance. But how conscientious are we in effecting changes? In participating in the process so that the election can come with integrity. Not just integrity, but of course it can be salutary in terms of an appropriate participation. And appropriate participation will involve arriving at the polling station on time, ensuring that we monitor ourselves, and voting rightly. It is understandable if APC, for instance, is dominating Lagos. We know the tradition of that place, rightly or wrongly, has been a little to the left, so to say, so it might not be a surprise, but what's more important is for us to make sure that the process has integrity, that it is free, fair, credible, and transparent, and accountability and transparency are assured in its course. Because Lagos is a very significant state, one of the strongest economies in Africa. It can go a long way to be a template, not just for Nigeria, but for other African elections, and more elections are coming, more council elections are coming, state off-cycle elections are also coming. campaign ahead of the general elections in 2023. So if we get Lagos right, it is possible that we'll get elections in other parts of the country right as well.
All right, Doctor. I mean, I like the fact that you said this is a wake-up call, but is this also, in a way, a commentary on the parties themselves? Because, yes, given the fact that presidential and gubernatorial elections have always fared just slightly better, but then the local government elections have always been like this. Why yesterday was a lot more telling was because we've added a good chunk of numbers to, those who are eligible to vote. But then the outcome was really very dismal. So is this also about the preparation and the strength of the party? You mentioned APC being the dominant party, in Lagos, and I believe in Ogun to an extent. But then if the claim that Party A or Party B has 1 million, members, 2 million members, why is that not reflecting on the day of the election, for example? We don't want to go into results until LASIEC, comes out with, the outcome of the election. But then I looked in particular at what happened at Agege, a local government area. Less than 10,000 votes, between APC and PDP. This is where the Right Honorable Speaker, of the House of Assembly comes from. An important major political hub in Lagos State. But then the outcome was so low. So how come, if a party is so strong that it couldn't even galvanize its own members to come out and vote for, because it's the parties that you are voting for, basically. How many people know the candidates, the councillors? If you know what I mean, Doctor. But before you respond, we will take your response after.
Very well, Steve.
We'll go on a short break now, Doctor, and then when we return, reflect on it, and then when we come back, you can, give us your answers. Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. We're still on with Dr. Biodun Adeniyi, Associate Professor at Baze University, sharing perspectives with us on yesterday's elections in Lagos and Ogun State. So, Doctor, you got the question right. Is this a referendum, as it were, on the party, even though the dominant parties will always win?
Okay, thank you, Steve. I think there's a couple of ways to look at this. First, if you look at processes and procedures, they are ordinarily stronger at the federal level, less so at the state government level, and even lesser, at the local government level. That's our system anyway. That's not how it should be. In other climes, like in the counties in the United States, the communes in the Nordic Scandinavian countries, the councils in the United Kingdom, you find governance, equally strong, across board. But our case is different for so many reasons. We have tried to undermine the councils and institutions, whether actual or abstract, are weak coming from the local government, a little stronger, at the state government level, and strongest at the federal government level. So that's the shame of our situation, and we are seeing it reflecting, in electioneering process, like you just highlighted. It is also possible that so many electorates just feel that, well, their vote will not matter, their vote will not change anything because they've been called out in times past, and yet it has not changed anything. And of course, you cannot fault them in their area, even if sections of government are doing their best, but there's still a lot more to be done. But how do we proceed from here? We cannot rest on our oars. If the citizens are in a state of faith are complete, sort of, the onus is on government, the onus is on the authorities to galvanize them further, bring them further out, and let them know that the hope is on the way. And hope looks on the way because we've been consistent in our democracy. 22 years is not a joke. What we need to do now is just to continue to consolidate it. And consolidating it means that we have to ensure that all tiers of government, particularly the local government, being the closest to the people, being the ones that are supposed to take care of some of the basics, that the ordinary citizens are concerned about, the markets, the motor parks, the drainages, housing arrangement, etc., that they are strengthened, and if this tier of government is strengthened, if they are made more functional, like the president somewhat did by trying to grant them further autonomy in the area of fiscal policy and responsibilities. Of course, we can say again that our democracy is being consolidated, that we are growing. But again, we need, our efforts have to be holistic, far beyond electioneering process into the areas of governance, and of course in the preparations that we make ahead of a major exercise like like election at that level.
Understood. Earlier on in our conversation, and I know Steve also mentioned the Speaker of the House of Representatives in his comments, but in his comments he also mentioned that he was a bit disappointed in the lack of sophistication as it pertains to technology. He experienced that his own card reader had technical issues when he was casting his ballot. So do you think that, though he charged that responsibility to INEC, naturally, do you think that INEC had failed in making sure that this was a swift and elegant, ballot, especially since the technology was supposed to make this very easy, was supposed to protect against any type of electoral fraud? But to hear the speaker say that that wasn't his experience when he casted his vote, naturally there's going to be a bit of a disappointment associated with that. What do you think?
Well, it can be disappointing. Do not forget that in the 2015 election too, President Jonathan didn't vote easily in Bayelsa, so, but that's not a reason why we should look away from technology. We know the importance of technology and how it's smoothing processes, how it can go far in ensuring integrity, transparency, accountability, and credibility in the process, how it can be inanimate in discouraging fraud and the predilections of citizens or some perverts to circumvent the process. It's a way to go in the 21st century, giving the fast move, into hypertext documents, the Internet of Things. And of course, we also see it around us, that all institutions, most of our institutions are introducing technology. So if practically all aspects of our life, are being virtualized, are being remotely done, the electioneering process cannot be an option. It cannot be an exception. Yes, there are hitches, but what we do, like it is done in all parts of the world, is to continue to perfect the process. But we also have to ensconce these within the limitations of our system. How well, how well would you say power is available? How well would we say that the facilities are themselves available? What about resources? What about the tendency of the human being, of party partisans, to pervert the process. All these things still come in, they will still be factored in, but that's where the law also have to be activated. Activating the laws just means that, we should be concerned about apprehending those who infract on that law, those who try to, who think that they have to be die-hearted about the process, who think that, they must win at all costs, and in trying to win at all costs, to get people, with a limited sense of the self, to come as talks, and disrupt the process or make it to be less than salutary. All these factors have to come in, but that's our system anyway. But again, we do not have to rest on our ass. We have to be concerned about improving it. There will be imperfections, there will be downsides, but they are not enough to discourage us from ensuring that we grow the system, because democracy is most certainly a way to go. We have seen development in the last 22 years, even though they could still have been more. Limitations are there. Corruption is still there. Poor sense of governance is still there. Lethargy of some leaders is still there, which is also rubbing off on the psychology of the citizens. But irrespective of these downsides, we have to keep trying.
All right, Doc, in all this, how do we really get quality attention towards the local government, not just in terms of the election? Yesterday was bad enough. the national leader of the APC, it was reported did not vote. 2 former governors of Lagos State didn't vote. The main man, Bode George of the PDP, not just APC, even of the PDP in Lagos State, didn't come out to vote. It's possible that they were not around or something happened, but then it said something about, local government election. But what I'm saying is even beyond electioneering or coming out during the local government election, it's about how do we draw quality attention to the local government, given that landmark achievement that President Muhammadu Buhari, did in May of 2020 when he signed an executive order, granting autonomy to the local government and to the judiciary, and even going as far as saying that any state that does not sign, key into that, he empowered the Accountant General of the Federation, to deduct from source the allocation meant for the local government straight, to them. If that, in my opinion, was meant to, and is in accordance with the Section 7 of the 1979 Constitution anyway, but it was a good gesture to show that there is importance attached to local government. So if that could come, right from the top, from the presidency, what else do we need to show that the local government and those who run the affairs of the local government are important, are not mere appendages of governors? What else do we need to do, to change the status quo?
Yeah, thank you, Steve, for that fundamental question. We also need to understand that systems and societies grow, not necessarily on the basis of laws and regulations alone, but because they are also mindful of those who are going to execute or implement those laws. You can have very perfect laws, very perfect regulations, and very perfect, ordering system, and yet you have people who are not committed to those laws. So they would just continue to find ways to circumvent those processes. In some local governments in this country, for instance, we have heard stories of how the headquarters or the head offices are practically abandoned, and they just report there when allocation arrives. They just go, collect salaries, share the allocation, and they go to the states, or to come to Abuja. By the time they are expecting an allocation again, they are back into the place, back in the place to repeat the same thing, and the cycle continues. So in that case, we're talking about the human element, who does not believe in the system, does not believe that the system can function. But how do we work on this beyond the autonomy, beyond the regulations or the executive orders signed by the president? Is the need for us to be concerned about the human element. And that's why mobilization is fundamental to our development efforts, the creation of awareness, a sensitization on the fact that we are stakeholders in the evolution of a nation. But if we continue to just exhibit maybe unpatriotic or nationalistic tendencies, the system will just be there laughing at us, and we will remain, ineffective human beings, wishing for a much more salutary system, imagining that our system is better, externalizing our hope, while we continue to suffer in eternity, until eternity, because we're not making any physical input, any input
Understood.
at the level of the physical.
Understood. Dr. Biodun, we are running out of time. I did want to, I'm sorry to have to interrupt you there. I did want to put in a last question before we end our conversation with you this morning. I don't know if you were aware, but, naturally when it comes to elections, there are always going to be positions and processes put in place to make sure that they are free and fair, whether they're observers or whatever the case may be. There were videos circulating on social media that showed that ballot boxes were being removed from posts before the due time. Was that something that you came across, and why do you think that this continues to be a problem for elections? Very briefly, of course.
Oh yeah, I saw a couple of videos, some of them believable, some of them unbelievable. But again, it speaks to the system too, and the character of the individual participating in the system. A kind of disillusionment. You don't have that sense of involvement. You are not integrated psychologically. You just feel that, you have to benefit. You have to be concerned about having your candidate win, irrespective of how the process went. You want to pervert it. You want to multiple vote. so that you can post a larger number, but you're not concerned about whether that person will deliver at the end of the day. That's the conscientization we're saying we need. We need a new level of conscientization. We are doing it at some levels, but we need it to continue, into future elections as part of efforts at growing the democratic experiment that we have chosen to rule ourselves by.
Thank you very much for your time, Dr. Biodun Adeniyi, who's the Associate Professor at Baze University. Thank you very much for joining us this morning.